Welcome to the Hinterland Baptist Unplug and Reset podcast, a podcast all about helping you achieve change and personal growth through our Reset Challenge. The goal? To help you pull the plug on stress, insecurity and depression and replenish you spiritually, mentally, socially and physically. And now your host, Pastor Chris.
Yeah, we're recording. Welcome, Glenn. I really appreciate you taking the time to do this, man. I know you're a super busy guy, but I really appreciate it. So thank you for that.
I love being involved in the local community, and I know that a little analogy I tell lots of people is that the church is the largest non-government provider of community service in our community, and when churches are being effective and serving their people well, honestly, it puts downward pressure on government to provide the services that everyone needs. So when we've got highly functional and highly effective churches, people's needs are being met, and that means they rely a bit less on government, which is a good thing.
Yeah, that's cool. We've got some really stuff that I'm excited about coming out in the new year here at the church. We've got a new initiative called Cr Help, where we're setting up a ministry where people work with carers of carers, because sometimes they kind of get forgotten, and often they don't really people, you get in a situation where you've got a parent that's getting elderly, or you have to care for someone, and you're like, where do I even start? And so we kind of help people through that and help them with self-care and connect them with the right services and things. So yeah, that's something we've got going in the new year.
That's so good. That's great. I think you can only serve others when your cup is full. When you're able to resource the needs of others through being when you empty yourself, it's actually quite hard to give. So it's important to care for the carer. Good stuff. What a great initiative.
Yeah. Well, and I'll tell you what, man, that kind of leads into what we're doing as a church, and kind of led me to asking you to do this. So if it's cool, I'll kind of explain what we've got going on, and then we could kind of use that maybe as a springboard to go from there. We, this last year, obviously everybody knows it's just been so crazy, and there's been so many, doing things for the first time and all of that. And it's been a big year for our church and our volunteers. And often when we come into the month of January, which is when this is going out, we just kind of mark time until we get into February, because people go on holiday and everybody's kind of in holiday mode. And what we decided we were going to do this year is try to leverage that time a little better. And so what we're doing is, because we've learned how to do it now, obviously, is for the month of January, we are intentionally going online, and we're giving all of our volunteers a break, just guilt-free, take the time off, enjoy it with your family. But we're not just like leaving people hanging either. We're providing them with some resources. We've got a journal for people. It'll have devotions and reading programs and tips for taking care of themselves and things like that. And of course, this podcast is part of it as well. But a really big focus out of that is self-care. And sometimes there's a little bit of stigma that comes with that word, but we've got to maintain ourselves. We have to take care of ourselves. There's definitely that's a biblical thing. We were created to be a work. You work and then you recover, and so we're leveraging that time to give everybody a chance to recover, especially after this past year. And we're putting out a different podcast each week. Mental health, social health, physical health, spiritual health, and financial health. And what I was hoping you and I might do today is just have a talk about, social and cultural health, because, you are definitely really plugged into the community, and you're a super accessible guy. I don't know how you pull that off, but maybe we could learn a little bit about how, you live and you do things, and how you handle, all that you have to juggle, and just have a conversation about some things like that, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sorry I missed some of that. It kind of just the internet transmission cut out, but I think you were talking about the sorts of things that I do and I recommend to our community to look after themselves when they're giving of themselves to the community. Is that kind of what you were looking for?
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, especially in regards to like social health and well-being. are having to do with our ability to kind of interact with the community and form meaningful relationships with the community, socially, culturally, because those things really do have our social health has a big impact on our mental and physical health as well. All of those things are very closely connected.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just thought
Well,
we could chat about that a bit today.
yeah. So I suppose I look after about 40,000 people in the southwest of the city, and that's kind of from south of Nerang all the way down to New South Wales, and then kind of west of the M1 out to the scenic rim. And there's lots of little communities in there. And one of the things that I've observed in our community of the 40,000 people I look after is that our sense of identity is embedded into the community we live in and the people that are around us. And I suppose what I'm getting at there is that our neighbours are important to us, but also the idea that we live in a place that is special is something that's quite precious to us. And I think that works in economies of scale. In the same way that works in the broader hinterland, it also works in the suburb that we live in, and it to some extent works in the church that we attend or the football club that we support, and it even works in our family. So when we identify with the people around us in a way that supports us and we support it, to me that helps us to feel validated, and that enhances our mental health. So when I'm talking to people from the community and talking about what's important to them, often I encourage them that actually being a part of a community group where you have shared values and shared ideas can be really good for your well-being. And I have some personal views about my faith and how that sort of thinking is backed by the Bible. I think the Bible is really clear, when it talks about continue gathering together. That's actually really important. And I don't think that's just important because, the writer of that book wanted the church to keep going. I think that's actually really good because it was actually a recommendation for our well-being, our mental health. Continue gathering together because it's good for you. And so when I'm talking to a member of the community, whether they're religious or whether they're not religious, whether they have a faith or whatever faith they might have, the first thing I'll often say to them is that gathering together with people who have similar values to you is actually important. The second thing is realizing that thing that you're doing is also part of a bigger whole. The work that you're doing in your football club, or the work that you're doing in your church, or the work that you're doing in the Spinners and Weavers down at Mudgeeraba Heritage Village down there is not just what you're doing there, but it forms part of a bigger whole and a bigger picture. And that's, when we start understanding that our little contributions form part of a bigger contribution, which in turn forms part of a bigger contribution, we actually realize that the little things that we do in the community, they make a difference. And I think the biggest issues we have in our community is when people become ambivalent or indifferent about the contribution that they make. I think that people, when they don't feel cared for or when they don't feel like their contribution matters, they're more likely to act antisocially. And that's a challenge. So
yeah, for sure.
I don't know if that kind of helps you understand where I come at from a mental health and well-being point of view. But that when we're caring for ourselves and being part of a community, our mental health is better. But also that contribution makes the collective interest and the collective consciousness sounds so airy-fairy, doesn't it? But
I think I follow you.
The collective identity of our community is enhanced when people are giving to it. And that's a really positive thing. When people feel proud of that and we celebrate that, it amplifies that power. And I think that's really good. That's really good for our community, and it's actually really good for our well-being.
Yeah, I agree with you, Glenn. I did a self-care workshop for some folks. This was a few weeks back now, but when we came to the part where we talked about social well-being, it's when you really start to think about it, we really benefit a lot from social connections and community. Like, for instance, if I live by myself, I don't know how to make a shirt, or build a house or do those things. And all of those things are a benefit of community for sure. So yeah, that it's very important. With this past year obviously been a big challenge for everyone. I mean, I can't imagine what you guys have gone through, like as local government, and what you've seen happen in the community in regards to that. Maybe you could share a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I think there have been two big things that I think have impacted how people perceive the world this year, and one has been, the COVID pandemic. The idea that lots of people around the world have got sick with COVID, or they've some of their other health issues have been amplified by COVID, and that's been really sad to see people unwell. I don't think that, it makes me sad when people get sick. That's no good. But there's been another dimension of that, which is how fear and division has infiltrated how we stand, and then the political environment, probably in the US, and also how that has been reported in the media. So to those two big things working in tandem has created a sense of people being afraid of being sick, but also afraid of people they don't understand, or people who think differently to them. The risk of getting sick, people wearing masks, all that kind of stuff has created this sense of caution or fear that I think has been counterproductive to seeing community outcomes, and I think has really profoundly impacted people's mental health. Watching that as a leader has been really hard.
Yeah, for sure.
In the midst of that, there has been some really beautiful moments of, amazing love. Really, I can't describe it no other way. So in the midst of the early stages of COVID, a series of local churches got together with the Gold Coast Convention and Exhibition Centre, and they managed to prepare, I think, overall about 60,000 meals for front of house health workers and teachers and people in need in our community. And the idea that the convention centre, it's owned by Star Casino, and a bunch of churches got together and started preparing meals and delivering them, I just find that that's just love, man. And I think there's no reason why churches should be working with a casino. Really, I'm not anti-gambling. Yeah. But the practical reality was that there was 4 executive chefs at the casino who weren't serving meals in the convention center because all the conventions had shut down. Those chefs weren't really working on their events. They had something to do, and the casino was like, well, we're not going to put you off, but we have to continue to cultivate good relationships with our suppliers. We don't want to stop that. What can we do? And the reality in that circumstance is the church jumped in, and there was just an existing relationship that existed between one member of a church and the convention center, and that partnership was struck, and then 60,000 people got meals that wouldn't have otherwise got it. And that, like I said, that went to students, frontline health workers, teachers, people in need who perhaps were in the tourism sector and lost their jobs. And whilst these two big issues, the pandemic and then this fear and division stuff, which I'd probably define as almost a political environment, a political driven environment, even in the midst of that turmoil and hard circumstance, Jesus' love shines out, man, because that's that feeding the hungry, man, that's central. There's a bunch of things we can argue about theology, but one thing we can't argue about is the Bible's really unequivocal about feeding people who are hungry. It's really quite specific in the Bible. Feed people who are hungry.
Care for the poor
help
and
the widow. Remember the refugee. Like, these are things that are in the Bible that are actually, we can argue about all sorts of things and theological differences that we might have between denominations, but those things are they're quite clear, quite literal in the Bible. So
they're kind of across the board. Hey.
Yeah. So it doesn't matter what denomination you're in. Those are big things. So feeding the hungry was a really beautiful thing. So I don't know if that's how it's been this year. And obviously I can talk a bit more about the pandemic and the local government response to that, or I can talk a little bit about the political stuff. I mean, I had an election myself this year, so I can talk a bit about that from a personal point of view and my observations of the US and the state election for Queensland. But to me, the value for our community is seeing these difficult circumstances and seeing wonderful outpourings of love and compassion in the midst of difficult times. That's the stuff we should be celebrating and being excited about.
And I really feel, I know it's been a tough year for everybody, but I know for us as a church and the community, I really think that on the other side of this, we're going to be better off for it. I feel pretty strongly about that. I really do. I know it's been hard for a lot of folks. I know I don't want to go overseas too much with it, but I've got a lot of relatives and friends and things in the U.S. and it's just been so wild and crazy over there, man. And and some of them I worry about. I really do. Like I've got a grandmother in a care home right now, and she is relegated, quarantined in a room. Because somebody at the center there got it, and so that's, it's hard. It's hard. And of course you've got all kinds of opinions and they're very polarized and they're just struggling with it. And then an election year to boot and all that kind of stuff. So it's been a bit wild over there.
Yeah. I mean, I'm actually having a conversation with my wife this morning, and she's a diligent reader in the mornings, and she reads the Bible every day. She's much better at reading the Bible than I am. I do read it quite a lot, but she's militant when it comes to her quiet time in the morning, and she's hit Romans. And Paul's letter to the Romans is really quite fascinating. So on my walk this morning with my wife, she's talking about Romans and talking about her reading this morning, and it just occurred to me that Paul's letter to the Romans is a time for us right now. The Roman Empire at that time was affluent. It had conquered much of the world. It was people were well off. Roman gods were worshipped. There was lots of idols. It was good times for Romans. Good times for Romans.
Times for
and
sure,
then
yeah.
Paul, which is probably not too different to the affluence of 2019 to some extent. Like 2019-20 is a pretty good time. Everyone's
really
in pretty
is.
good nick, and we're unemployment's at record lows, and we're in don't get me wrong, there are still problems, but we're in a pretty good space. And Paul's writing to the Romans in the early Christian church, and he's talking about here's what I want you to do as the church is growing, and he's talking about the environment, and you kind of read through the first couple of chapters and it talks about a few different things, but you get to Romans 12, and which is one of my favorite chapters of the Bible, and it talks about here's what I want you to do, God helping you take your everyday life and offer it as a sacrifice. Bring it to the Lord, and don't overthink this thing. Like you don't have to be some sort of theologian, and you don't have to be some sort of preacher. You just have to bring what you have to the Lord as a sacrifice. Offer your everyday life. And I think, that's a message for today. I think people right now, like you said, have gone through a really hard time this year. And it has been hard, both interpreting the political environment and the media at the same time as dealing with the fear around the pandemic and the COVID, the virus and such things, and also the social isolation that's occurred as a result of social distancing and some of the places that we go being shut down. And if we're thinking about where to from here, I think we've learnt through this is that the world's not going to end. The world's not going to end if all the restaurants shut down. Like, we're still going to be around. We still have to find ways to visit our neighbours. We've probably had my wife and I probably had more conversations with our neighbours in the last 6 months because we've both kind of been working from home a little bit than we have before. And I think that's been a really productive thing, a really beautiful thing. In fact, only just a month or so ago, a neighbour called up my wife and said, "Oh, look, I've got a job interview. Can I borrow some shoes?" You know, I need a fancy pair of shoes. My wife is a filmmaker, so she doesn't have any fancy shoes. But the idea that our neighbour came and knocked on our door, even though we don't have much in common with them, and said, "Oh, look, can I borrow some shoes?" is kind of that shows an element of trust that's been cultivated over the last couple of months. And I suppose I'm hoping that people across the hinterland and across the city have started to leverage this, what has been a difficult time, for a really great future with better relationship with the people that are either close to us in our proximity, and our families who perhaps we've had a bit more to do with over the last little while than before.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting you bring up the book of Romans. I was actually just talking about this in our service on Sunday, but in the Bible, and how it's an old book, but it's also very relative at the same time. Whereas I think, we talked a little bit about affluence. Affluence kind of changes and technology makes advances, but people are still basically the same. You read
People are people.
Yeah, you read the New Testament about things that were going on, and it's just like, yeah, people really don't change that much. Other things do, but people are still just people. And
I realize that every day, Chris. I realize that every day, no matter how, and as a counselor, you do get to come across a few people who are pretty wealthy, but, it doesn't matter how rich you are or how poor you are, you still worry about what people think of you. You still,
for sure.
Our bodies are still our bodies. We still have health issues. We might have different health issues. We still have self-care issues. Whether you are, working every day as, as a nurse on the front line at the local hospital, or whether you're, a CEO of a big company who's responsible for 10,000 people, you still have this personal stress that requires us to rest.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think I've learned, and I think, my wife Jude and I have really talked a little bit about 2021 is going to be a time where it's where we prioritize rest. We're not going to rest all the time, but we're going to make sure that rest is a part of our week. Rest
That's
is
cool.
a part of our week,
And
that
seems something that seems to be coming up with a lot of people that I've talked to lately. It's like, okay, we kind of need to reevaluate what we're doing here and plan these things intentionally, taking care of ourselves intentionally.
Yeah. I think the things that we do, there's a chemical reaction. There's chemicals released in our brain when we do something that elicits a response. So when we press like on Facebook, or when we complete a task at home, or when we do the washing up, or when we, when you give your wife a great big kiss, whatever it is, when we do something that elicits a response, a chemical reaction occurs in our brain. And the same thing happens when we rest. When we rest and let our body relax from that action response science that happens in our bodies, there's actually a restoration that occurs. There is a recharging that.
Whoops, we froze there, Glenn. I'm not sure if you can hear me or not. Hopefully we come back.
And you're a pastor, work, church on Sundays work for you. So I don't imagine you get the luxury of having a Sabbath on Sundays. But I'll be encouraging people this coming year to, take time to let your body switch off. Have a social media break. Stop work for a day. Try to have some time in the week where you're not actually doing tasks around the house or looking after your kids, or look, if you have to, get a babysitter or do whatever you can. Find someone to help you look after your kids, so you can just have, even 4 hours of rest time. Rest time is important. We need to let our bodies rest.
Yeah, for sure. And that social interaction is important. And but unfortunately, there are some negative ones as well. I know it happens with me as a pastor sometimes, and I'm not dealing with 40,000 people. I might like to try that as a pastor, but I don't know if I could keep up with all of them. But when you do have those negative interactions, like you said, when we do get those, I know they affect me. How do you? Is there a way that you deal with that yourself? Do you have something you do?
Yeah. So negative reactions or negative interactions happen most regularly. They do happen a fair bit with my job. And look, the first thing I do is try and disassociate my job from my person, which is hard. But realizing that when someone is angry at a circumstance, it's not. They might make it personal. They might want it to be personal. But if a matter raised with me or a negative interaction with me is only personal if I make it personal. So trying to step back from the circumstance and almost looking at it like a fly on the wall. What would you recommend Councillor Tozer to do if you could be in his ear? What would you say to him? And that's quite a practiced technique, but it works in my marriage. It works in my professional relationships. It works in relationships with my children. If I can be in the moment but disassociate from the conflict and the emotion in order to recommend, knowing who I am, how I should respond to a troubling interaction, that's a good skill to develop in our life. Last night, here's a personal circumstance. Last night my wife was very upset. Our house is flooded. We've had we had 250 mils of rain over the last 3 days, and our basement's flooded, and my wife is a bit sad. And last night, she was in a pretty bad mood, and she was frustrated because I've been doing a university assignment. I'm studying a course at Bond at the moment, as well as doing my job, and I was doing my assignment on Sunday night, and I wasn't able to have relaxing time with her. Sunday night is normally a night where we do that, and so it's Monday night, and I've come home, I've stayed at home to try and sort out the flooded basement, and I've been working from home all day. It's been a bit frustrating, and she comes home and she's upset about the house, and she's quite angry, and she's not angry at me, but she's angry at the circumstance, and I'm taking it personally, and it probably took me an hour of us kind of bickering with each other. There was no yelling or anything like that, but it was just yuck for me to realize that all she really wanted is she just wanted to cuddle on the couch. She didn't want any particularly physical attention or anything. She just wanted to rest. She just needed a break, and she just wanted to cuddle on the couch. And I just had to, I felt like I'm in this moment where she's getting quite upset, and I'm praying at the same time going, God, what do you want me to do here? I don't want to yell back. My first reaction is to just go, that's not true. But sometimes a husband or a wife needs to work out whether they want to be right or whether they want to resolve the situation.
Yeah,
and so for me, the resolution was I could be as right as I liked, but all my wife really wanted for me to go, it's going to be okay, and for us to just lay on the couch. And we ended up watching a couple of episodes of a Netflix show, and don't get me wrong, it wasn't life-changing in any way. It wasn't a very good show. but that moment of emotional intimacy that Jude and I shared last night after her rough day, we're both frustrated about the house. I could respond in frustration. Probably I have every right to be frustrated as well. But for a partnership to work, you've got to work out what does the other person need, and how can I bring that to the table?
Yeah.
And not both parties are always going to get that right. Obviously, when we're firing on all cylinders, both parties get that right, and that can be a really beautiful and awesome thing. But sometimes we're human, and not both of us are doing that at the same time. So the only way we get to a point where we find resolution, whether in our marriages or with our kids or in our church or in our community group or even in our professional life, is one person has to decide, okay, well, how do I bring to the table what is needed for us to find resolution? And do that. And honestly, when you learn how to do that, and I'm not great at it. Last night I probably nailed it. I feel a bit proud.
Good on you.
But if you can learn how to do that well, then your mental health improves, and also the mental health of those around you improves. People want to be around you when you can be good at that.
Yeah, it takes a lot of strength and maturity and even time to learn to do that. It's interesting watching my daughter
practice.
Practice. Watching my daughter and my son-in-law and watching them interact, and remembering back to when I'd been married for a couple of years and what that was like in comparison. And sometimes I think, you know what, I just got to be patient with them. They're still learning and practicing. And, my wife and I have been at it for a long time. Certainly we have our moments, and often she's the one that brings resolution, but it does take time and practice. It's a long time. I think I think we froze there. Oh, there we go.
I think we did. Yeah, I think we're back now. It's all good. It keeps flashing up saying my internet connection is unstable. I'm trying not to take offense. I do think I'm a little bit unstable, but
yeah, it's the internet connection.
It might be me, not the internet connection. It could just be me.
Yeah, that happens. The joys of technology. It's lovely when it works, but it can be challenging when it doesn't cooperate like we'd like it to.
Yep.
So yeah, I've watched you, I shouldn't say watch you. Things come up in social media feeds and things that, and I follow your counselor page and that. And I've watched you interact with people online, and I've always been impressed with how well you do that, because those things can, start circling the drain, so to speak, pretty quick when they're online.
Oh yeah.
And do you find it difficult to balance like personal interaction and social media interaction? And you're in the media as well. I mean, like, larger media too.
Yeah, the short answer is yeah. Yeah, I do. I do. I am getting better at it, but it is quite difficult to separate personal from professional sometimes, and managing boundaries. When I'm talking to new counselors, and there's in 8 years, there's been new counselors that have come in, and they will sometimes come to me and, hey, how do you deal with this? How do you deal with that? And setting clear boundaries of what you're willing to do and what you're not willing to do is really important. Trust is important. Some people in a public office or in public life, some people who say that they're your friends actually aren't. And sometimes people who have been your friends have circumstances come up where their personal interests, and they leverage your friendship for their personal interests. And it's important to be pragmatic about that. I'm under no illusions about my place in the world. I mean, reality is I'm a baby politician. I'm a local government politician. So I fix potholes and pick up bins. Don't get me wrong, we do a lot of other great stuff. It's really important for both the social development and economic development of our great city. But it's important to have a sense of relativity about what I do. So I don't know. In order to establish balance on social media in particular, I try to not take anything personal. Firstly, I establish very clear boundaries for conduct. So if someone says something untrue about my family, I'm very quick to block that. And I just block it, and then I don't see it anymore. They might keep doing it, but I don't see it, so that kind of makes it okay. You can't change anyone else. Sometimes people have got it. We had an issue a little while back where someone came online on my Facebook page and they started saying that I was corrupt. And it wasn't just any sort of corrupt. It was like, conspiracy theory connected to a one world order, lefty politics, crazy, connected to the UN taking over the world type. And it was troubling. It was troubling. And I felt for the person, because the person was actually from the Christian community, and they were quite sure that I was part of some sort of coordinated effort to undermine Christian values in community, which is entirely the opposite of my view. But that was really hard. And so, I mean, I undermined that very quickly by saying, okay, mate, look, I'm not going to argue with you, but if you keep down this track, I can only deny what you're saying so many times, and eventually it's going to come to a point where I block you. And I did. And the person didn't let up. So they went on my wife's Facebook page, her business Facebook page, and started saying that she was on the take because she had a wonderful opportunity earlier this year to speak at the United Nations headquarters in New York on social impact films and how they can promote inclusion and great community outcomes. And he was quite sure that he wanted to take her down as well. And then we had to block that. So, to me, that idea of setting a boundary, saying, well, that sort of conduct isn't okay. And if you take down, and it got to a point where I found a person who knew that person and said, you need to ask that person very politely to don't talk to Councillor Tozer anymore or his family and stay away. Otherwise, we need to take other steps. That's a difficult circumstance. Most people aren't as troubling as that. But that can be a problem when people get very passionate about what they feel about. What I've found in social media is that most people, it's a bit like a pub, a bit like an establishment that serves alcohol. After people have had a few drinks and they're sitting around the bar, they tend to get a little bit talky. And the inhibitions lower, and they start being a bit, maybe they're not quite being their true selves, or maybe they are being their true selves and sharing things about themselves or sharing things about their opinions, sharing their fears, sharing their hopes, sharing their deepest, darkest secrets, things. And it's not always, the pub at about 11, 12 o'clock at night isn't always, it's quite it can be a bit of a rowdy place because everyone's kind of a bit loose. And that's a little bit like social media. Imagine, everyone kind of drinking in their own homes and then getting together for a bit of shenanigans. You cannot ever be sure. So
you don't really know, do you? It's like, is this person serious or just being a troll? I don't know.
Yeah, but if you're in the pub and you are of sound mind, you can tell when someone's drunk. You can tell when someone's
for sure
not looking right. And how you deal with that is you don't get in an altercation with them. You kind of walk away, or you say, hey mate, you've had a bit much to drink. How about you just chill out for a bit? And that works best when you have a few mates around you who trust you. And that on social media, that's how I operate. I have a community of people on social media who kind of are of sound mind and have similar community values to my own. And there are times where I don't have to fight a battle because there's a group of people who see the community the way I see it and love the community the way I love it, and they're quite willing to step in. But most importantly, that stepping in doesn't involve escalating the conflict. That stepping in involves de-escalating the conflict. And it's a bit like the situation that I talked about with Judy last night in my marriage. We can be right, or we can move towards resolving, or there's nothing wrong with waiting. We don't have to solve all the problems tonight.
Before I was
social media.
Back before I was long time before I was a pastor, I used to work as a bouncer in a in a pub called Whiskey Jack's. It had the swinging saloon doors and everything, and it was a pretty rough place. But it was really a matter of you don't want to try to prove you're right. So sometimes you got to work towards that resolution and involving different people. That it really does work. It's very similar. That's a good analogy between the pub and social media.
Yeah. Sometimes you just got to work out how to get people home safe.
Yeah, there you go. How to get them home safe.
How do I get people home safe? So there's a person, let's say there's a person on social media who's giving me a bit of curry. The first thing I can think of is I can try and teach him a lesson, or I can say, how do I get you home safe, mate? You aren't really talking right. How do I get you home safe? So I think when you start having that idea in your head about social media, how do I get you home safe? I think that's a good thing to do. I don't imagine being a bouncer is that much different from being a pastor, right?
It depends. It depends. Some days there's a lot of similarities, but
Goodness gracious.
yeah, that's a funny job. I've got a ton of good stories about it, but yeah, social media is an interesting thing. It's something that I think and talk about a lot because it's not like it's a sideline thing now. It's mainstream life. I've kind of taken on an attitude where I use it more just to disseminate information, and I don't really interact a lot on there. But that's just me. And I mean, we've got a great team of people here at Hinterland that handle all of that stuff, that put out just great content, and they do a beautiful job of it. And I'm really thankful for them. But yeah, I'd have to say personally, I'm still sorting it out and trying to figure out how to interact and be social interaction. And social media is its own arena. I mean, it really is a big part of people's lives. And I'm still cautiously optimistic about it, I guess.
For an optimum life, you have limited resources deployed to your sense of purpose. And so how much, let's say you have limited resources and I'm allocating those resources to be involved in social media, that's good, but how much of my resources are being drawn from that which should be deployed to the purpose that God's put in my life, or my marriage, or I think my marriage is something that God's purpose for my life, and sure. That's something that equation happens every single day, and we are most healthy when the limited resources that we have in a given day and in our bodies are deployed towards positive, healthy activities. Whether that's exercise, or whether that's great relationships with our family and friends, or whether that's eating well, or whether that's resting, whether that's work. I mean, God created work. Work is a good thing. When we're working in our purpose, there's a good thing. But there's definitely times when we're deploying our resources, our limited resource, our scarce resources, into activities that aren't productive or functional, and it's at those times we need to say, okay, you know what, that's an area for efficiency. We can make things better there. We can make our lives better. We can improve our quality of life if we don't deploy resources where they're not needed.
Yeah, it is. It's easy. I mean, I don't know. I didn't live a long time ago, but it seems like today we are very, very, really, really busy, and there's a lot of opportunity to be busy. And like you say, we've only got so many resources within ourselves to use, and sometimes we do get to a point where we're just empty. And I think if we keep pushing, when we get to that spot, we can actually do damage to ourselves and hurt ourselves. And we do need to sometimes be able to say, okay, that's enough. I've got to stop. I've got to rest. And I know a guy like yourself, where you are involved in so many things and interact with so many different people. Do you ever find yourself in a place where you're like, okay, I've got to stop and take a break here for a little bit? I was just talking about being busy, and I don't know. Like I said, I didn't live a long time ago, but it seems like we're so busy today, and with social media and stuff. And I think, what do we do with all our time before we didn't have mobile phones and stuff like that? But sometimes if we empty ourselves out to a point and we keep pushing beyond that, we can actually hurt ourselves.
Absolutely.
Do you ever get to a point where you're like, okay, I've got to rest a little bit. I've spent myself and I've got to take a break?
Yeah. I probably share a little different view in that, I think there's always been pressures of life for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. Humans have pushed themselves to the limit. I remember my great grandfather was in a war. Like, I can't even imagine what that would have been like for stress.
Yeah.
And you think, you read stories in the Bible where, God's chosen people spent 40 years in the desert. I mean, that's not relaxing, man. They're straining and stressing every day.
Yeah, for sure.
So I don't think stress or strain or anxiety or worry is anything new.
Yeah, the Bible talks a lot about those things, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think there's always been an antidote. and that antidote is rest. And even Jesus, talks about, I can carry your burdens for a while. Let me carry your burdens for a while. And I think that, that's not just because he's a nice guy. This is the creator of the universe going, hey, look, I appreciate this world is a stressful and difficult place. I didn't put you there, I didn't put you there on earth to relax, man. I got a place to relax. It's coming later.
Yeah.
Right now I'm trying to turn the heat up, to refine you, to strengthen you, to build character in you, to test you. I've created this world to draw out of you the best of you, and so you can understand what is truly you. And then, you know what? Part of that is important. It's important to realize your limitations, realize when you need to recharge and when you need to rest. So, whilst I think today and this life is busy, and we fill, our life with lots of things that are not restful. And I think it's important to,
along with like what you were talking about.
Realize that you have a limited resource, that everything you have, whether your time, your energy, your money, your family, your resources, it's limited. You do not have unlimited resources. You have a limit of your resources, and your job in life, whether you believe in God or not, you have limited resources.
There's no change in that, is there?
Your purpose in life is to deploy those resources in a way that has the optimum outcome. And that, for some people, that optimum outcome is their own optimum outcome. It's for themselves. But I think the best possible outcome, the best outcome that promotes the most personal wellness, is then when we have a collectivist and a community interest in the way that we deploy those resources. When we, because we feel really good when we're generous. We feel really good when we're compassionate, when we forgive. There is a sense of amazing relief when we let go of the things that we're holding onto so tightly. It's really good for our mental well-being when we learn to do that. And,
I know.
That's all part of rest, man.
I know. Well, me personally, I know I always feel so much more fulfilled and so much better when I'm doing like actual pastoral care type work than when I'm just, busy administrative type things. Those things are important, of course, but it just feels better when you're working and helping with people and helping people. And I think along the lines of like stress and anxiety and things like that, I think we probably, like you say, we've always had that. I think we just have a lot of distractions, maybe compared to the past.
That's right.
Maybe that's more what I'm getting at there, is just distractions. There's so many things that can keep us from just, being still and knowing that he's God kind of thinking.
If you buy into the whole, what the Bible talks about, what's happening in the world, and if you buy into this idea that there is a loving God who cares for us and created a world that is created for us, if I wanted to undermine that, what would I do? I'd distract creation. Let's say there is a subversive entity that is trying to steal from us something that is precious. And let's say that exists. Let's say both of us agree that exists.
Yeah.
If I wanted to steal that, I would make people afraid. I'd want them to worry and be anxious. I want to do it for each other.
Oh yeah, I lost you again there for a little bit, Glenn. Sorry about that.
That was gold, Chris. That was awesome.
I know. I was like, man, this is going so good. But there's that distraction again. Yeah. Anyway, that's I agree. If you can distract people from what's important, and we can get so tied up with things that don't really matter. It's easy to do that.
Yeah, I mean, if you do believe in, like I said, that subversive, if you believe that the world's created for us to enjoy, and you do believe that there's some sort of subversive entity that is working against us, if I was that subversive entity, I would be saying, focus people on themselves. Focus people
Yeah.
on serving themselves. Because if all of the joy and love and all the good things come from God, let's get people not thinking about that. Let's get them thinking about themselves, where all the drama comes from.
Yeah. I know I'm the least happy when I'm focused on myself, for sure. I think a lot of people would probably find that.
So much of our negative emotions, the pride and anger and self-righteousness come from, or are driven by, self-interest. And that's, that's a problem. That's something that we can work on. We don't have to be, we don't have to be like that. Even the people we love who are not people of faith, people who aren't Christians or whatever, the people we love the most are those that are focused on others, that are focused on a collective well-being. And whether that's it. That's people we like.
Sure. There's things in the Bible, and I think there's a contextual application for a lot of things. And then there's also, like, you take speak the truth in love, for instance, from the book of Ephesians. And in that context, he's talking about, preaching the gospel. But at the same time, you can take that principle of speaking the truth in love, and you can apply that in your life, and it works. And there's so many principles in the Bible like that they're contextual, and there's a specific context, but there's also, you can apply that in the way you interact with people. Even
absolutely,
if people who may not share the same faith, it still works.
Absolutely. And I think there's also, for every verse that we might say things like speak the truth in love, or whatever, there's a way we can frame those verses that are driven not by the love of Christ, but by our self-interest. And that's where we need to, this is where accountability and community come hand in hand, and get around us and bring better outcomes, is when we, I have a group of mates, and obviously my wife, who are really strong at, if I say something that might sound good, but is actually not embedded in this idea of loving others truly, they're quick to go, Glenn, hey, look, just, you've got a healthy ego, just back right off that and have another think about it. And I think that actually plays to the verse that talks about, we're called to love God with our mind. Yes, we're called to love God with our heart and, with our soul, but with our mind, we're called to Him. Think carefully about how we love. Think about it. Don't just spout off a verse and speak the truth in love, even though that can be really good when it's coming from the right place. But don't try not to twist words around such that we're, misrepresenting their meaning out of self-interest or pride. It's important to be thinking about how we can be better and more accountable to that.
Yeah, it's a good way to look at scripture. It's I try to look at it as a mirror. Look into it, what do I see in myself? How can this change me, rather than using it like a cricket bat to swing around at folks. It's
good. Or a baseball bat, cricket bat.
Yeah.
I mean, I suppose you're from Idaho, is that right? Boise?
Idaho,
right?
Yep, Boise, yep.
Yeah. So yeah, exactly. Baseball bat, or if you're from Australia, cricket bat. I suppose you've been in Australia for long enough now to talk about cricket.
Yeah. So it'll be 12 years in March. So been a little while. Yeah. I'm glad to be here right now. I got to say that.
Oh man, I tell you, I actually don't know how. There's definitely some people in the US right now who are going through some difficult times. Without wanting to pick a political side. The conversation is very divided, and that division. There is one person or one entity in the world who's in charge of division, dividing the sheep from the goats, and we're not at that stage yet. It's not our job to do that.
No.
Our job is to love. Our job is not to divide the sheep and the goats. It's very clear in the Bible who gets to do that. It's not me. It's not you.
Like the
Our
wheat
job
and the
is
tares, same thing. Yeah.
Exactly. There is, the Bible is pretty clear when it talks about the sheep and the goats and who gets to do it. It's not me. So let's just be very clear about what we're called to do. It's love our neighbor as ourselves.
Yeah, for sure. Hey, look, Glenn, I know that you're busy and you've got things to do and all that. And maybe as we kind of look towards wrapping things up, how is planning for 2021 looking for the community, and as far as events and things like that go? Are you guys able to start thinking that direction? I mean, I know you're probably really on top of it. How's it looking with everything?
Yeah. So at the moment, I think events are still going to have some social distancing provisions around them and some contact tracing provisions around them. I don't think the virus is going anywhere in a hurry. And I think one of the things that we'll see out of a new future is that people will become much more aware of their personal health. And if people are sick, they'll stay home. I mean, Australia has a bit of a workaholic mentality. Can you hear me now?
Oh, there we go. I got you now.
There we go. Okay, yeah. So I think events will start again in maybe March or April.
Okay.
And I think I think just now the kind of the pubs are starting open, the dancing is starting again. So you'll see a few more community events then. I mean, the work of local government is so much more than just events. We have we've got some pretty major projects that are going on right now. We're doing a technology project at the showgrounds where we're connecting some optical fiber or some digital fiber to the showgrounds to get some better Wi-Fi down there and help them with some of their 20-year plan activities. We've bought all the land south of Mudgeeraba, so there's a 54-hectare site, and the council has bought the entire 54 hectares to expand the sports precinct there, which is really exciting.
Cool.
So where the netball courts are and the rugby league fields are, we've bought all of the area between there and the M1, and there's going to be some open space parkland, and we've got a project going on now to deal with that. We've got a bunch of projects going on right now with a number of local schools in trying to encourage young people to be more involved in active travel, which is walking to school and riding to school and skateboarding to school, doing things that don't involve cars, and that's to try and reduce traffic congestion. There's a good environmental outcome and also a good health outcome with that. And we've got a little project up in Lower Beachmont where we're designing a little community centre up there, which is pretty cool. So Lower Beachmont is probably my only village that doesn't have a hall or a community centre of sorts. So, that's been long overdue, and we've started that design process now. So we're looking at that as well. On top of all that, my office is moving to Firth Park. So we're moving over to that sports precinct. We're going to take some of the top floor up there, and it looks like we'll have a library kiosk in there with a lounge and some other things, which is pretty exciting. So we're moving out of a commercial rental tenancy right in the heart of the village, but we're moving into the heart of the sports precinct. So there's lots of projects on. Not all of them are events, but there's lots of things that we're going and doing to try to continue to build the community and do the best that we can to serve people.
Sounds like you're very busy.
That's a bit of an update. There you go. Hopefully that helps out.
There you go. Cool. If somebody's wanting to be involved in the community and they call your office up and say, hey, I'd like to do something, be involved, help out somewhere, what do you guys say to them?
A couple of things. Firstly, I try and find out what they're interested in. The best way to help the community is find something that you're passionate about and get involved in that. So I had the guys from the Lighthouse Museum in today, and they're a bunch of ex-veterans and Vietnam vets and World War II vets, and they're light horsemen. So they're some of them are into horsemanship, but some of them are teachers and historians, and they're lacking volunteers. So they just came in today and said, hey, look, if anyone wants to come and be the secretary down at the Mudgeeraba Lighthouse Museum, we'd love to have some help there. If you're interested in military history, there's always, both the museum down at the Lighthouse Museum and also the Hinterland Heritage Museum is looking for people. I know that each of our sporting groups, often one of the best ways that you can help our communities by getting involved in your local sporting team, whether it's the Mudgeerbar Spartans Junior AFL Club, or the Benogan Valley Bulls Cricket Club, or the Mudgeerbar Redbacks Rugby League Club, or the Mudgeerbar Little Athletics. We've got this great culture of active and healthy families. We have about 9 or 10 primary schools in our division. So there's lots of young families who like to keep active. So there's always room for volunteers there. And I suppose the last place is those community interest groups. So the Lions Club of Mudgeerbar are a great organisation to get involved with. You know, there are other recreational interest groups like the Gold Coast Tech Space or the Gold Coast Woodturners. So if anyone comes in here, normally I say is, what are you interested in? Here's a selection of community groups that you might love to be a part of, but the first step is to choose to participate in something that you're passionate about. What I generally discourage, which sounds a bit crazy, is don't try and reinvent the wheel. If you really want to start your own group, then please do that. But often the people who want to start their own groups, unless there is really a gap in the market and there isn't a group that exists, that's sometimes a bit more about their ego than it is about the actual community service side of things. So there are so many local churches, local community groups, local sporting groups you can participate in that exist already. And I always encourage people to, you know, find a way to participate. And while community leadership can be a thankless job, it's a precious and important job for our local area. So if you've got people in your congregation that want to help out, obviously we'd love their help, but the best way they can help is find something they love, something they're passionate about, and participate in a local community group, and just, you know, bring their love of people and their love of their neighborhood into those groups.
Awesome. Yeah, Glenn, I really appreciate you taking the time, man. It's been good chatting with you. Good to catch up. And yeah, we'll have to do it again soon.
Anytime, man. I love it. And I'll try and get a more reliable internet connection next time.
Yeah. It's a funny thing, isn't it? Even sometimes, like, we've got great internet at home, and every once in a while it just goes on the fritz. I don't know. It'll be beautiful and then it'll just go pear-shaped. But what do you do?
I'm working on it. I'm working on running better digital fiber across Mudgeerbar. We'll see how we go. That's another project for me.
There you go. Cool. And people who are interested in following you, you've got a counselor for Division 9 Facebook page, right?
I do, yeah. Facebook.com/Glenn on the GC, or on Twitter, Glenn on the GC, and Instagram's the same. If you just type my name into most search engines, you'll probably find a bunch of news articles about different things that I've done. But if you jump on Facebook and just type my name in, you'll find me on there, and I'd love to connect. If you Are you there?
Oh, there we go.
We're back.
I was like, come on, internet. We're almost home.
All this gold. That's right. All this gold.
No.
It's killing me. Anyway, I'm sure you'll be able to edit it all out. What a blessing. I hope Hinterland Baptists have an amazing Christmas and a wonderful 2021. And I can't wait to hear more about what you guys are up to in the coming year.
Awesome, Glenn. I appreciate it. Oh, one more thing. People, like, I just got your email or your newsletter and read that. Where might people go to sign up for your newsletter if they'd like to do that?
So you can sign up to the newsletter on my Facebook page, or you can do it on my website, or you can do it on the City of Gold Coast website. So if you type Glenn Tozer, City of Gold Coast, and you jump on the City of Gold Coast website, on my profile page, you can subscribe to the newsletter there. It's an official correspondence about some of the things that are going on in our local area.
Awesome. Well, man, like I said, good chatting to you. Thanks for taking the time, Glenn. I really appreciate it.
A pleasure, mate. Take care.
And we'll catch you later. Have a good one. Thanks so much for listening in today. You can find out more at hinterlandbaptist.com. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook. A special thanks goes out to our team of volunteers who makes this podcast possible. I hope you found it helpful, and I will be praying for your health and well-being. Have a great day.